All right, welcome back to the Homestand Show. Joining us now is Will Gottlieb of CHGO Sports to talk about the Bulls. They're on enemy territory tonight against the Toronto Raptors in the play-on game. Will, what do you think of the Bulls' chances tonight against the Raptors?
I think it's going to be a close game. These teams are really similar in the way that they defend. Both generate a ton of turnovers. Both don't turn the ball over very much. I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup just because of the way that they sort of clash in their strengths. Um, Both teams kind of have struggle scoring in the half court, but I think it'll be a really close game. I think it'll be exciting, kind of a classic East Coast grinded out game. But I do think it'll be a little bit closer. I know the spread is moving towards the Raptors. I think -6 now on DraftKings, but I think that the Bulls will probably cover. It'll be a close game. My gut tells me the Bulls are going to win, but my head tells me the Raptors are. So I'm pretty conflicted, but I do think it'll be close.
Yeah, I like the Bulls to cover as well. It's at about 6 points right now. There's a lot of frustration in Toronto, especially from Toronto Raptors fans, about the Raptors this season and the position that they're in. And a lot of fans thought maybe Masai should have sold at the deadline rather than buy Jakob Poeltl. How does the media in Chicago and the fans feel about the Bulls season? Because I feel it's kind of similar.
Yeah, again, a big similarity. I think the Bulls pretty disappointing season, certainly up until the trade deadline, have kind of turned it around since then. But yeah, I mean, when you are 7 games below 500, you've got a pick that's outgoing to the Magic, of course, top four protected, but just sort of the outlook not as rosy as it was while Alonzo Ball was playing at the beginning of last year. I thought it might have been a good opportunity for the Bulls to either make an addition at the trade deadline to get themselves back into play-in range or even playoffs. The East was kind of wide open. But with the way that stars are being marketed around the league, a ton of draft picks changing teams, I thought it also could have been an opportunity for them to make a move and sort of recoup some of the assets that they had outgoing. But of course, they stood pat and then, no pun intended, went up and picked up Patrick Beverley, who has really, I think, changed sort of the way that this second half has looked and the way that the team has defended, the way that they just sort of approached the game. So I thought they could have gone either direction. Obviously, like I said, they stood where they were, but the buyout market has been good to them, I would say.
I want to dive deep into Patrick Beverley, Chicago guy coming home. What's his impact been like in the locker room? And then as for tonight here in Toronto, how big of an impact can he play? Because we saw last year, of course, he was very integral in the Minnesota Timberwolves getting into the playoffs after their play-in victory last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's been a huge veteran presence. Obviously, has over 10 years of experience in the league. But the way that he has given confidence, I think, to guys like Kobe White and Patrick Williams and Ayo Dosunmu, really sort of shepherds them along. And I think you can sort of see the way that they've played since the break with a lot more confidence, shooting the ball, looking for their shot a little bit more. I think it also just sort of pushes those guys down the pecking order into a spot that is realistically more along the lines of where they should be at this point in their career. You've got two now really heady veteran defenders in the starting lineup alongside Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic, and DeMar DeRozan. And I think it makes a lot more sense to sort of slot those veteran guys, Alex Caruso and Patrick Beverley, into the starting lineup. I imagine that's the group they'll go with today, but the Patrick Beverley addition, usually buyout guys don't make that big of an impact, but I think just given the defense and the know-how, he's sort of helped the Bulls connect and fit the pieces of the puzzle a little bit better.
I know Toronto fans still have that recent memory somewhat of obviously the championship. So entering this game, it feels almost like, it's great. I know it's a play-in. If they get through Chicago, then they might get through Miami or Atlanta, but then they'll lose in the first round of the playoffs. So I don't sense quite the same excitement as we have in recent years in Toronto. How is it in Chicago?
I think it's a pretty similar story. Yeah. The Bulls obviously lost to the Bucks in the first round last year. Semi-competitive the first couple of games, but really just kind of whimpered out in those last three. I think the Raptors represent a really tough challenge. And I think, like you said, they're sort of in similar positions as far as like their longer term outlook. Obviously, Raptors buyers at the deadline, and they have a couple of outgoing picks as well. But For the Bulls, it's sort of this question of where does this group of Vucevic, LaVine, and DeRozan, where do they top out? What is really the ceiling? I think a lot of fans and the front office would argue that things sort of couldn't be the same without Lonzo Ball, but that's sort of the reality that they are in right now. And so, it's sort of a question of like, are we destined to see the same outcome as last year, even if they do the improbable and beat both the Raptors and what will be the Heat in the second game of the playoffs? Even if they can accomplish that, is facing the Bucks again in the first round really a step forward, or does that just sort of represent what this group's ceiling is?
We're speaking with Will Gottlieb of CHGO Sports. Will, what's one key matchup you're looking at tonight that the Bulls can take advantage of against the Raptors?
In terms of players or
Yeah.
in terms of sort of
Players.
strategy? Yeah, I think the Caruso Siakam matchup is going to be really interesting. Obviously, Siakam's got a huge size advantage, but Caruso, I think, is one of the best defensive players in the league. I think he should pretty clearly be an all defensive team player. The Raptors obviously have all that size, not just Siakam, but along the front court. It's going to be really difficult to keep those guys off the glass. And I think the offensive rebounds is probably going to be among the things that decide this game. So if Caruso can do a good job of keeping Siakam out of the paint, if he can do a good job of preventing those offensive rebounds, I think the Bulls should feel pretty good.
Nikola Vucevic, he's a guy who's very polarizing, I feel, amongst NBA circles. People say he puts up big numbers, but they're kind of hollow stats. He's projected to be unrestricted free agent after this season. Do you see the Bulls making move to retain him, or is it kind of time to just move away from like that big three of DeRozan, LaVine, and Vucevic?
Yeah, circling back to the trade deadline, I mean, I think this was one of the big questions is like, okay, if you're, gonna stick with this group, that means you kind of have to bring back Nikola Vucevic as an unrestricted free agent this summer. Otherwise, you lose him for nothing. And you've traded Wendell Carter and 2 top 4 protected picks for a guy that, got you to the playoffs maybe once. And then what? So I think it's a really difficult decision whether they want to be in the business of having Nikola Vucevic from sort of a cap standpoint and protecting the asset. Maybe they pull off some sort of sign and trade. Maybe they bring him back to what would hopefully be a team friendly deal, and then they could move him down the line. It would be hard to imagine a world where they let him walk for nothing, but he is an unrestricted free agent. I think he'll have obviously a large say in that. Whether the Bulls can pull off a sign and trade like they have done several times in the past, whether it was for DeRozan from the Spurs or Lonzo Ball, will be interesting. But again, he's an unrestricted free agent, so he has most of the power, I would say, in this situation.
Well, the big storyline out here is DeMar DeRozan against his former team, his former team in the Toronto Raptors. I'm beginning to think it's a bit overblown because I feel like that time has passed. Obviously, this is a big game in the playoffs. He has a chance to knock out the Toronto Raptors. But where are you at with this storyline, and is it picking up as much steam in Chicago as it is here?
I would say not quite as much. Obviously, going back to Toronto, where he had such a long and successful career, probably more of an excitement from the Toronto fans. But when you're talking about DeRozan going against the Raptors, I think for me, what's interesting is the way that the Raptors defend him, whether it's throwing, double or triple teams, even at times, getting the ball out of his hands as soon as he crosses half court. If he is in a mindset of like, I've got to make them pay for that, I think the best play for him would be to find Vucevic rolling or popping, getting it to Zach LaVine and letting him attack the defense that's a little bit tilted. But if he's sort of in this mindset of like, I'm going to go prove my former team that they shouldn't have traded me, that, I'm still the guy and that they sort of made a mistake or whatever it is, I think that could put the Bulls in sort of a precarious situation where they're trying to go 1-on-2 or 1-on-3. And, as good as DeRozan has been, as good as he is, that's always going to be a difficult matchup. So I expect DeRozan to do what he typically does, and that's just read the game and make the right play. But I do think there will be some intrigue, certainly from the fans in Toronto about, just getting a chance to play against their former star for a trip to potentially the 8th seed.
I want to stick with DeMar because we all know, saw him grow up here in Toronto, of course, went away to San Antonio, kind of fell off the map. And then he kind of reemerged when he got back in Chicago. He's on pace to become a top 20 scorer of all time in NBA history. Really one of the truly most underrated bucket getters in the NBA. When you see DeRozan and how he fits into the Chicago system, what's he like in the locker room again? And just how is he continue to evolve his game at this advanced age?
He is a metronome. I think people really gravitate towards him, especially the young players. He's developed really great relationships with Dalen Terry, the Bulls rookie, Patrick Williams, Kobe White. I would assume all those guys really look up to him and sort of have learned a lot from the way that he approaches the game, the way that he approaches his training, and the way that he approaches getting better. Really regimented guy, commands a ton of respect. And I do think that sort of the way that the Bulls have put the ball in his hands really does cater to the way that he plays. They do try to get out in transition, same as the Raptors. They don't really shoot the three very well, same as the Raptors. But when you're in the half court and you can just say, DeMar, go get me a bucket, he'll get to his spots and at least give you a really good chance. So he's been great for the Bulls. Like you said, one of the more underrated bucket getters in NBA history. And it's been really a special opportunity for me to sort of get to know him in the locker room a little bit and just see the respect that he has among his own players. And then, any team that comes in, just everybody is sort of loading up on him and understanding how talented he is.
Yeah. And this all tees up for DeMar DeRozan mid-range buzzer beater to knock the Raptors out of the NBA play-in. Before I let you go, Will, quickly, just your official prediction for this game, if you have one.
Yeah, I made one for our group. I don't feel great about it. I feel like I'm jinxing them, but I would say the Bulls win. It just seems like that kind of season where everything that you expect to go wrong, they somehow prove you wrong. And it just feels that way. I'm going against my head and going for my gut here.
Yeah, funny. It sounds exactly like the Toronto Raptors
Exactly
season, right?
like it,
yeah.
Two similar teams. Will Gottlieb of CHGO Sports. Will, thank you so much. Let's do this again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Okay, take care. All right, that's Will Gottlieb, CHGO Sports, Bulls Raptors.
I just find the DeMar storyline fascinating.
It is.
I really do. I mean, is there another athlete in Toronto sports history, who was so popular, so beloved, but had to leave for the team to win?
He was a sacrificial lamb. You can't think of anybody else where he was the guy, one of the only guys that ever stayed in Toronto.
I mean, Wendell Clark left and Sundin came in, but they
They
never
never
won.
won.
No,
Yeah,
they never won anything. The Raptors.
Man, that's
won.
a great question, Sharps. I don't know. I'm trying to think of Jays.
Wilson last night. So Fred McGriff left, right?
That's
really
right.
Very
That-
well
they
known,
bang on.
beloved
Yeah,
player. In comes Joe Carter and Alomar.
yeah.
Right, they win the World Series twice.
Because they brought in McGriff to win. Didn't really happen. Then he
Yeah.
went to the Yankees, I believe. Went to the Yankees.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
But I
That's
mean,
a good shout.
I still don't think it's quite the demand level, though, right? I mean,
No,
sports
no.
was different back then as
Yeah.
well. The way
yeah.
in pop culture,
The way that trade shook up not just the Toronto Raptors, but the NBA.
NBA,
Yeah.
Right? You think about it back then, how the whole landscape of the NBA kind of played out.
Plus the firing of Dwayne Casey, who was
Firing
coach of the
Dwayne
year.
Casey,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah, that's a great one
Those
too,
are
actually,
huge
yeah.
moves, right? It's so strange with DeMar DeRozan. Obviously, as a Raptor fan, I find myself wanting him to succeed.
To do
I
well.
know it's against the Raptors, right? Because he's such a good guy.
Yeah.
And you feel like a guy like that who's been so good, who could be a top 20 scorer, needs to get his flowers now. And hopefully, eventually, at some point in his career, probably not with the Bulls, but win an NBA championship.
He's getting the game winner tonight.
Yeah. That'd be nice.
Simple as
All
that.
right, there he is. DeMar DeRozan getting the game winner against the Raptors tonight. All right, coming up, it's the big reveal, the wrap up of the show, and the Poutine Dog review by producer Sean.